One of the funniest things I think I've heard in my life is something that you said, Shane, which was, you're like, I don't live in a city. I live in an apartment. I live in my apartment.
Yeah.
I mean, especially during winter. I don't know.
Yeah.
These last few weeks, I'm like gearing up for the end of my semester, and I'm just like easily almost 90% of my waking hours, I'm just sitting in this exact spot that I'm talking to you right now, just going over the same material over and over again until my brain kind of leaks out of my ears, and then I have to drink it back up to get it back in there.
Slurp,
It's
slurp.
just sort of a cycle. Yeah, just slurping up my own shitty thoughts over and over again.
That's what our listeners are doing. They're slurping up our thoughts.
Drink up, kids.
Enjoy.
Do like I did. Chug Pedialyte this morning.
You know, that scene in Snowpiercer where they like lean over and look into the machine that's creating all the protein blocks, and there's that like quick shot, the like horror shot of it's like a million crickets or cockroaches or whatever, just insects being like ground up in these giant wheels and then producing these little blocks of sludge.
Yeah.
That's what my mind looks like for this last
Is that what it is?
week or two, and then I'm producing stuff that's just like those blocks of sludge just on an assembly line. Yeah.
Golly. That's what my insides felt like this morning.
Any other horrible body metaphors you want to get to?
Aside from that, I'm in debt. I think this is a very good thing for me. It keeps me keen and waking up in the morning.
Did you initiate new debt just for shits and giggles?
I'm always in debt. I'm always
just taking on new loans.
Debt. I'm always
taking
incurring
out a
debt.
series of personal loans.
Yeah. I don't know. I've been thinking about it a lot lately about like, especially when we'll talk about later about like Enron and all that shit, but about like bankruptcy and just like the way that nobody thinks about this, but like that America is itself a tax haven. And in fact, we talk about, offshore accounts off there. We are an offshore account for like a huge amount of capital. Like the only reason that the fucking like huge, crazy, stupid skyscrapers that are like 10 feet wide or whatever going up in Manhattan are there, it's not because people want to live there. It's because New York City real estate is a vehicle for money laundering. And that's a lot of the reason that fucking rent is unattainable for a lot of New Yorkers is not because like, New York is so expensive, but it's used as a tax haven or money laundering vehicle to park money from abroad into a relatively, stable, whatever, investment vehicle. And I was just thinking about how like, it seems to me that, the higher up that you go in the kind of, class or whatever, and that kind of echelon of people, it's more fraudulent and dirty than anywhere. And the amount of like debt being offloaded or being like the most crazy example that I have been thinking about lately is the Johnson & Johnson shit, which is like that they were like, we're going to, the division that was, had a judgment ruled against it for their participation in the distribution in the opioid crisis. They're just like, we're just going to shift that to this division and spin that off of Johnson & Johnson. And then we'll just let that die. And we're just going to, circle the wagons against, on the rest of the company and all that shit. However, the consequences for us being in debt is just like you could just never live again anywhere that requires a fucking credit check to get an apartment or whatever. It just becomes an increasingly expensive fucking prospect. I don't know. It's not fun. I'm saying, why can't I do the fraud and get away with it?
or why can't you cut bits of yourself off and spin those off and put the debt on that? Just chop off your pinky and be like, sorry,
we're getting somewhere.
That pinky is what took out all those loans. That was the part of me. That's what's liable.
It wasn't me. It was the pinky.
There you go. Yeah.
If this is an option. I'm just saying, like, how often do I really use the pinky?
Can
we live without it?
You got two.
Exactly.
I didn't know this until I just Googled it because you mentioned it, Dwight. That Johnson & Johnson ruling was just overturned a couple weeks ago.
What?
Isn't that crazy? Yeah, the $465 million that they were supposed to pay, the Oklahoma Supreme Court overturned it. So just some fun news for all of us.
Are you shitting me?
Oh, good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm too fucking hungover for this. That is
Yeah.
so fucked. Why? Fucking why?
The opinion says we hold that the district court's expansion of public nuisance law went too far. Oklahoma public nuisance law does not extend to the manufacturing, marketing, and selling of prescription opioids. So, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but that sounds like a technicality. And
Can't punish a business for being profitable.
Yeah, it says the manufacture and distribution of products, quote, rarely causes a violation of a public right, and that the manufacturer generally does not have control over a product once it's sold. It's not their problem.
Just imagine the same logic being applied to like street drug dealers.
Right.
You know, like
I remember in like freshman year or sophomore year or something like that, I took an economics class from a professor that ended up being a bit of a mentor for me. Mm-hmm. And he told this story, which I'll never forget, which was, it was about a court case, a Supreme Court case. And fuck me if I'm getting it wrong. This was like, it was a long time ago. Shit, how old am I? Anyway, yeah, it was like 15 years ago or something, maybe more. And the court case, I think it was against Buick. And it was like when cars were initially being manufactured and being purchased by, Americans for mass consumption, whatever. And the case in question was like, if an individual component on my car fails, is it Buick's fault? Is it the car manufacturer's fault? Or is it the manufacturer of that part? Mm-hmm. And because, like America doesn't build cars, we just assemble them, right? Like individual components are purchased from abroad by, Ford and GM and all that stuff to go into, factories, which then they assemble the vehicle. So it's not like anything's necessarily manufactured from like raw material to a semi-finished good. It's made from semi-finished good to finished good in the country. Mm-hmm. So the question was, and I think ultimately the court case ruling was like, well, because a consumer item such as a car is so complex or whatever, it actually is on the onus of the car manufacturer to guarantee that their car works, so that if you get fucking hurt because a tire popped or whatever, that actually is the fault of the manufacturer. Mm-hmm. And I bring that up because to me it's like, I'm not a fucking lawyer, so obviously the parallels are probably vastly wrong or whatever, but I'm like, that just doesn't jive, because fucking Johnson & Johnson is selling it and knowingly participating in being a market maker for fucking opioids and shit. And they should, the fact that they're not being held liable for that is just like, well, then why fucking do anything anymore?
Right.
Then just put fucking drywall in children's cereal and shit.
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to say that, and we can cut this if it sounds too extreme or whatever, but like what you were just saying makes me think about, like, I've tried a lot of antidepressants, and every time that I like have started a new one, I like Google it or whatever. And, people have been using the internet to talk about being on antidepressants for a couple of decades. And I just remember, like, when I started taking Wellbutrin, it was like the first one that had really helped me. And I had some side effects. I was Googling them, and there were people taking twice the amount that I was taking that had posted 10, 15 years before, which the amount that I was on was like the highest therapeutic amount. Anything beyond that, all it did was produce side effects. So it's like for years, people were just taking more and more. And it's like, is there a consequence for that, for the fact that they were prescribing people something that like all it really did was hurt them? There's not.
Wow.
I mean, especially in cases like that, there's very rarely strategically there aren't like long-term studies done, you know what I mean? Like to get a drug approved, you just do a few clinical trials, you can prove XYZ or whatever. Right. But the reality is we don't really know, especially with those kinds of like, what are they called? Like, psychologically applied like drugs, like medications for psychiatric purposes, right? There aren't, until there is a generation that's been on it for like 30, 40 years, there's no real way to know for sure what those long-term effects are going to be. And the companies that produce that stuff, right? Like, they're very content to just kind of like take things off the market and put something new on, instead of, having to deal with the liability of that over a long enough period of time.
Well, that reminds me of like drugs like Suboxone, like buprenorphine, used for like opioid addiction treatment. Generally, the dosages that doctors start people on for that, or like even today, are so much higher than are necessary for most people. I mean, generally, a starting dose on that is going to be around 16 milligrams a day. In some cases, it can be 24. But without working up to that dose, you don't know exactly how much the person necessarily needs. They may only need 4 milligrams a day, but they start people out at 16. And, something like Suboxone, it does help you but it is habit forming itself, and eventually you are going to have to come off of that one as well, right? And so if you've been started on a unnecessarily high dose, that's just going to be that much more difficult for you to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there Suboxone? Is that sublingual? Does that like dissolve under your tongue?
It does. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Now I remember, when my my best friend explained to me that he had been addicted to opioids for a long time, and he kind of revealed it to me. He said that he was buying Suboxone like from a drug dealer.
Oh, sure.
To like stay off or whatever. And I'm just like, the fact that like he even has to like do that and like resort to a black market to like help himself and stay off of opioids,
Right.
Well, as with, I mean, obviously they don't make it, again, if you're uninsured, I mean, some states are better about it than others. Some states have like, I know like in California with Medi-Cal, and I know in New York as well, like some states will, their Medicaid or whatever will cover it for people. But for a lot of states, it will not. You would need to have insurance, or you're going to be paying cash for your prescription every month. And you also need to, in a lot of states, pay your doctor cash as well, because that's also not covered by the insurance. So there's big barriers to, that's, I guess, why a lot of people would maybe need to get it off a black market or something like that, because in a lot of places it's difficult to get, even if you want it and need it, It's
such a joke. Like I was thinking about this, now that we're kind of staring down whatever Omicron variant is going to bring us. And I was like, the Democrats that are currently in power have like every time there's like a fucking event like that, it's like Omicron's here, all the more reason we should have Medicare for all. Like the messaging is like there. Like every time there's these like mass fucking medical events that the entire country is collectively experiencing, would be like a messaging opportunity to be radicalizing for people, to be like, hey, this is all the more reason that we need to nationalize payment for health insurance, or for healthcare. And they just like, what do we got? We're going to be sending out home kits to at-risk populations. We're gonna make sure people get back off the holidays, get back on track. He's been especially sleepy lately. That's why I kind of wanted to bring him down here. He's fucking hungover like I am. Yeah, again, it's just so unjustifiable. It's so unjustifiable. And even, thinking about my friend, and this was, a very common story as I've come to understand it. It's like he was using the Suboxone just to get off of, Oxy. But then, it ultimately was unsuccessful. And then it turned to heroin. And it was just like, needless to say, in the long run, it did not work out.
Well, there's sort of another interesting little wrinkle there, and this is sort of unrelated, but as fentanyl has sort of replaced heroin, as fentanyl has sort of taken over, so the way Suboxone works is that, like, generally, in order to like transition from an opioid to Suboxone, you used to have to wait for a period of at least 24 hours. Sometimes you could get away with 12 after the last time you'd used. And the reason you have to wait is because if you take it too soon after, it will like immediately put you into withdrawal. So that rule used to be like 24 hours for heroin and stuff like that. But as heroin has been replaced by fentanyl and all these various like fentanyl analogs, not for everybody, but for a lot of people, that period of time that you have to wait has grown much longer to like 2 or 3 days or more that you have to wait, like in withdrawal, before you can take this medicine that's going to give you that relief. And it's made it way harder for a lot of people to actually transition onto Suboxone, because it's so much more difficult to actually do it. You have to stick out that withdrawal with nothing so much longer now. It's very strange, especially since fentanyl is shorter acting. It's shorter acting than other opioids, and yet it has this sort of strange effect as well. Not for everybody, but for a lot of people. For me personally, it's very strange. But that has for a lot of reasons. Also, it's just so much more deadly and unpredictable. But fentanyl has really made that sort of life and getting out of that life so much harder. It's really made everything about being an opioid addict worse.
Yeah.
That's fucking depressing.
Yeah.
That's fucking
Yeah.
Can I ask, in interest of time, Carrie, I'm really curious to know, while we're down here, if you wouldn't mind telling us about that article that you sent to us.
Oh, sure. Well, we're already depressed.
Oh yeah, no, it's going to get worse for the record.
Keep it coming.
Yeah,
it was. I saw the Debt Collective, which is on Twitter at Strike Debt, which is a debtors union, posted this article from Longreads the other day. I mean, the title of the article is "Debt Demands a Body," and I sent it to you guys, and I'll include it in the description here. It's long. I'm not going to go into like the whole thing, but it's definitely worth reading because it was just such like a deeply personal account of how debt affected this woman who wrote it, Kristen Collier. She describes how her mother was able to take out a bunch of student loans in her name and how it felt when she discovered that had happened, how it felt when, she realized the only option to actually get rid of this debt would be to like send her mom to jail. And, what she ended up doing was waiting until the statute of limitations on the criminal charge against her mother would run out, and then kind of worked with a lawyer to get the debt removed now that her mother couldn't be criminally responsible for it. And it was like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's just interesting, for the fact that like she was even able to take out that debt without her daughter being involved, and that amount of money that like no school really cost that much, especially like undergrad. And it really speaks to just the irresponsibility of these institutions and how they're really just like playing with people's lives. Like it would be one thing if it was like one loan at one institution, but it was just like, it's a systemic issue. It was like tons of loans at different institutions. All anybody needs to really ruin your life is just like your name and social security number. And we're going to talk about this a little bit on the main episode today too, how that information is handled and entrusted to various institutions. And at the end, she included a call for Joe Biden to just make all the debt go away with the stroke of a pen.
Which he totally can.
He can't do it for the private student debt, but he can do it for the federal student loan debt, which is currently, from when this article was written, it's sitting at, what is this? $1,811,629,805,092,
Yes.
which is just like an unthinkable amount of money that could just go away.
Shareholder value. And for the record too, like it's also a social justice question because women, and specifically women of color, tend to are the largest proportional holders of this debt. So if you wanted to, I don't know, make the country a more equitable place, as is, supposedly the party platform, I might suggest starting there, giving people money, giving people, a raise.
But what about all the people who paid off their debts?
Yeah, what about that? Think about them.
I'm thinking about them all the time.
I'm thinking about them right now.
Yeah.
What about the people who had money?
Yeah, shouldn't we give them money for having had money to not have to take on loans?
You know what? I would say, my proposal for that is figure out how much money they paid off in their debt and just give that to them as well.
Sure.
Just create that out of thin air and give it to them. Who gives a fuck?
Stop developing a new like fighter plane or whatever and just give them that money.
This is like and for the record, they don't even have to do that. Like the fucking the line that I'll never forget is when Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke went on to fucking 60 Minutes or whatever, or whatever it was, to talk about how they actually did the TARP program, the Troubled Asset Relief Program in 2008, to give the big banks the liquidity that they needed to make sure that the world didn't fucking descend into Thunderdome or whatever. He was just like, so is this? It was asked,
is that tax money that the Fed is spending?
It's not tax money. The banks have accounts with the Fed, much the same way that you have an account in a commercial bank. So to lend to a bank, we simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account that they have with the Fed. So it's much more akin, although not exactly the same, but it's much more akin to printing money than it is to borrowing.
And he was like, no, we just go into the bank's account and just turn the number from this to that.
Oh, that's so cool.
So cool. It can be done at any time. It would be as easy as somebody standing over somebody else's shoulder, looking at the computer, being like, "Yeah, go here and do that." And that could be done at any time.
Yeah.
You just give if you could even do it in a fucking dumb fucking capitalist way and just give the banks the money to put in our accounts or whatever. And well, here we are. So while we're down here,
I was gonna say I just looked up that quote, and he literally says it's printing money.
yes.
Yeah.
That's
Money
literally
printer
what he
go
said.
burr.
Burr.
That's all we need, man.
Yeah.
Fiat. Sorry,
This is why we need crypto.
Yes.
Detcoin.
Which I guess fucking dropped fucking 20% this week.
What, crypto and like Bitcoin?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh shit.
Oh,
did
that
it?
was me. My bad.
Was that
My
you?
bad.
Yeah, sorry.
Hang on, let me see. Oh, yeah, ouch. Yeah, it went from $52,000 down to $47,000 in the span of 90 minutes?
No way.
60 minutes. 60 minutes.
Wow.
Yes.
It shouldn't even be worth that much to begin
Hodl.
with.
Hodl. Hodl. Team Hodl.
To the moon.
God. Oh
Fucking
God.
so bad. While we're on the subject of, spectacular failures and bankruptcies.
Wait.
Go ahead.
One quick thing, just because the hodl thing reminded me of this before we get to the big boy here.
Yeah.
Just in thinking through like the whole idiocy of the sort of like meme stock thing and the whole the GameStop and AMC. Like a week or two ago, I was gonna try to get tickets for the new Spider-Man movie.
Okay.
That's coming out, and it was they were being sold on a Cyber Monday, which was then rebranded as Spider Monday.
Hey.
All right.
And it was like at midnight you could go and get the tickets, and I went and the sites crashed for like Cinemark and then I was like looking at AMC and stuff, and they were down for 20-30 minutes, because and I think that was probably part of a thing where they were trying to engineer a certain hype, and then people were trying to like, get the tickets or whatever. You're sort of creating an artificial scarcity for it, whatever. And eventually I just said, fuck it. But while I was like looking around, because I barely buy shit in advance like that, I usually just am like walking around the movie theater. I'm like, oh, I have time today. Let me go see this. If it's at all a possibility. And in any case, I posted about this that night, but like on the AMC site, there was like, if you're one of the first 86,000 people to get through and like buy your Spider-Man tickets, we'll give you this like Spider-Man NFT collectible.
Oh my God.
And it just like it evaporated any of the joy or excitement I had about like seeing the new movie instantly. And me and Carrie were talking about it. It's also like the whole like idiocy of the bubble of that as well is like, if there's 86,000 of them, like where's the rarity? You know what I mean? And
What are you supposed to
just
do
a
with
picture of Spider-Man, of course, like any of the other NFTs where it's just like a shitty little bit of art.
It's just pointing to a location online where you can have a picture of Spider-Man.
Exactly. I don't know. So that was just like a whole weird moment of reckoning with that came into my mind because we were talking about Bitcoin and then HODL and AMC and the whole like meme stock thing. I
ask you a question? And I'm not being funny. Like I mean this
sure.
sincerely.
Mm-hmm.
Is this the same new Spider-Man film? Because I swear in my head, like you've been talking about a new Spider-Man film for like 7 months, and I just don't know if they've had
It's the same one.
I've been excited about this upcoming Spidey film. I've been hyped about it.
And that's not a knock on your enthusiasm for it.
That's fine. My enthusiasm is basically deflated. Like I decided to not even get the fucking tickets anymore.
Oh.
Now I'm like all grumpy about it. So I'll see when again if once I'm done with my shit on my end. If I have time, like around the holidays or whatever, to go.
Should I see it? Should I go see it? Would I like it? Would I enjoy it?
It's like the 26th or 7th film in the MCU, as well as being the 10th film of like the Spider-Man movies, and it's going to involve all of them. So presumably, since you've seen none of that, it'll be really enjoyable for you. I think you should definitely go see it, Dwight.
I think you should watch the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies and then go see it.
I don't know what any of that is. What's the one where there's like regular Spider-Man and there's like cool Spider-Man in one of the movies, like where I see all those GIFs, and the one where he like dances.
Oh, that's Spider-Man 3. That's because he gets the
right.
symbiote in him, and it turns him like evil emo.
He's like a cool guy.
Where do I get this? I would like to be a symbiote.
Space.
You're gonna have to watch Venom as well to understand that.
And then you have to watch Venom too.
Fuck, it's a lot.
Yeah.
All right, forget it. I'm off it now. That's all it took. I'd really love to talk about the main event here, because for those that don't know, this is the 20th. This week was the 20th anniversary. I'm smiling while I'm saying this. The 20th anniversary of the Enron bankruptcy, and I think it's very important for especially some of our younger listeners that may not have been around to remember what it was like when this was happening, for one of the largest and most prestigious darlings of Wall Street collapsed in a fucking fiery blaze within the span of like 6 months or whatever. It's an incredible case study, and by far was one of the most, and I'm curious to know if this was the case for you guys, or maybe I'm just alone in this. It was by far one of the most radicalizing early memories that I have, at least, of this thing fucking exploding and going bad.
I mean, for sure, it was. I think it also was right around the time of 9/11. So in my mind, one thing definitely took priority over the other. But for a long time, Enron was, at least in the like whatever amount of critical cultural space, Enron was sort of the like go-to word that was a stand-in for like corporate malfeasance and corruption, and it ended up being like the butt of jokes in a lot of like comedy stuff in the early 2000s too. That was my reading always of remembering it as a young kid, seeing that happen.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. No, I mean, I just honestly, one of the things, it became like a joke to me, because this was like at the end of it was like around the time of the .com bubble and shit. And I remember like the early Bush years was such a kind of bleak time of like just economic turmoil, especially like with the .com boom, the Enron collapse, 9/11, like, and then the beating of the war drums and shit like that. Like, yeah, it's maybe not that much of a fucking surprise that we ended up being, radicalized so much, because if you were paying any little bit of attention at the time, it was just like a complete disaster. Maybe we should just give like a quick primer, I'll just give like a 2-second thing about like what Enron was and how it collapsed or whatever. Most of my understanding of the kind of like intricacies of the Enron collapse was from a fabulous documentary from 2005 called Enron: The Smartest Guys in the Room. And if you haven't seen it yet, I cannot recommend it enough that you do take some time to watch it.
I have not seen it. Yeah, I do need to see that.
Yeah,
Is that on Tubi?
It is. It's free on Tubi, which
right.
I didn't know. I didn't know what Tubi was until today. Have we talked about it? Is it a?
we're
we've
big
talked
Tubi
about
fans.
it.
We've been talking about it.
Yeah.
What is like? What I don't understand.
Mike turned us on to Tubi.
Is it free things, but there's commercials or something?
It's a free streaming service that has all kinds of things on. We've actually watched some of the documentaries we watched for the show on there too.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, look, I gotta.
It is ad based. It also has Peter, the guy who played Peter Brady, Christopher Knight, has his reality TV show on there. So just a heads up.
Oh, really?
It's called My Fair Brady. So.
Oh Christ! He's a very interesting looking gentleman. He's not Jordan Knight's brother, is he?
Oh, that's a great question. I'll research that while you speak about Enron.
Looks similar, but maybe I'm totally off.
Is this a reality TV person?
Jordan Knight?
Jordan Knight is from New Kids on the Block.
Yes. And has extremely catchy, extremely problematic song from 1999 called "Give It to You," which is
enough said.
Wow.
Okay.
I mean, you listen to it and like, wow, what a jam. And then you listen to the lyrics now, you're like, oh my God, this is really bad. Anyway.
All right. Just to confirm, they're not related.
Got it. All right. Good to know. So Enron was formed in 1985 by Ken Lay, who was an energy trader, and basically it was formed as a conglomeration of a bunch of energy companies. Energy meaning like, energy production, oil and gas, electricity distribution, all that sort of stuff. And basically what had happened was it was born out of this extremely toxic corporate culture environment in which, basically profit overall, just in my mind, a hyper capitalist Like this is like if you had distilled all of like capitalist greed and put it into one American company, like Enron to me was it. Because it, again, above all else, we need profit, and we be damned everything. And of course, and I'm sure we can talk about this a little bit more later. They because of their intertwinedness with oil and gas, they were very intertwined with politics, specifically the Bush family, where there was close personal relationships between Ken Lay, both with George H.W. Bush and George W. Bush. But basically, one of the big things that they used as a tool to spoof the market into increasing their share price was the use of let's just say a controversial accounting method called mark-to-market accounting, in which basically, if you're trying to create a valuation for your company, you traditionally would look at assets and liabilities and that sort of thing. And the mark-to-market method, which was you had to like apply to use this, especially if you're a publicly traded company. And this was signed off by their corporate accountants, Arthur Andersen, as well as the SEC. And basically that allows you to say, hey, my valuation is based off of the potential revenue I think I'm going to get from this business activity. So, they say like, hey, we're going to, open up this plant, this natural gas combustion plant, a power generation plant. And we think we're going to get $10 million over each year over the next 10 years. So that day, you can just say that I'm worth $100 million more because of that. It's fictitious. It's based off of market feelings. And that's the point of like the term, the mark to market thing, is to say like, hey, what is the market valuation of this asset or this liability or whatever? So you can just make it be whatever you want. And this was used. Go ahead. Sorry.
They were just self-reporting what they thought they were worth.
Yes.
Okay, that sounds legit. I mean, okay.
Right. I am worth millions of dollars.
I'm so rich.
It's amazing, isn't it? I just became super rich. I'm using mark-to-market accounting.
I own a house. Big deal.
And of course, so the question is, how did they do this? Well, they did this with the passive and active participation from one of the large 5 accounting firms, which was Arthur Andersen. And basically, they knew, they didn't know, they knew what was going on, and that a lot of this shit was, bunk or whatever. Like we were talking about with Johnson & Johnson, they hid a lot of their debts by offloading debts or underperforming assets into a series of shell companies and all that sort of thing, in the names, in some cases, in the names of some of the executives, notably Andy Fastow, who was the CFO. And this is how they did it. And they got away with it for a long time. And this was the kind of like, in my mind, like the kind of Clinton go-go 90s sort of shit where everything was cumulative, everything was wonderful, everybody's making money, it's it doesn't matter, don't look at it too closely, everything's going fine, just shut up, enjoy the champagne, that sort of thing. And ultimately it didn't go well, and it got to a point where basically they couldn't hide it any longer, and they ended up just collapsing. I mean, the whole thing collapsing. I mean, it went from a stock price of like $80 a share to like 80 cents a share or something like that.
Oh my God.
In an extremely short amount of time. Obviously, a lot of people's, and this is the case, I think, with a lot of the kind of .com bust sort of stock things, is a lot of families and retirement funds were caught up in these sorts of, stocks that was just like, well, it can't go wrong. It can't go wrong. And as a result, they just, I'm not going to say fortunes, but I mean, large parts of, retirement packages evaporated overnight. And, people that may have been counting on that money, again, in a country where, we've essentially privatized, the functional retirement of a lot of people in this country, because Social Security is completely insufficient, to say the least. Things like this affect it a lot. As a result, Arthur Andersen imploded, basically. I mean, imagine these two just giants. I mean, and for the record, the other kind of like large accounting agencies, the other 4, PricewaterhouseCoopers, KPMG, Ernst & Young, and there's another one I can't for the life of me remember right now. They exists today, and took on a lot of the clients that left from Arthur Andersen. But that was a huge fucking hit. In fact, I remember my first job, which would have been, I guess, a little while after. I guess it would have been like 2008 or something. My first job after college, there was a woman there that was an accountant at Arthur Andersen. And I remember hearing the story that, like, yeah, she needed to fucking jump ship or whatever after that imploded.
Oh, shit.
And it just became like a bunch of refugees with CPAs, I guess. Anyway, so a fabulous implosion of this. So the question was, what happened as a result? I mean, all along the timeline of this, basically the large personalities in the firm, and the people like Ken Lay and Jeff Skilling and Andy Fastow and all that stuff were selling shares and from their options packages and enriching themselves and putting money into their pockets. Partially because it was wildly profitable or whatever, but also because they knew that eventually, like, this was not going to last. And the way to do this, again, we were talking about this earlier about, like, how is America a tax haven? You could just sell these options, put it into your, personal accounts, and that's just kind of the end of it. They were sentenced, ultimately, Ken Lay and Jeff Skilling, as well as Andy Fastow and a host of other people, to do time. Ken Lay died between, and I'm using scare quotes here, I'm injecting just without anyone's consent here, I'm injecting my personal conspiracy into this. Ken Lay died between conviction and sentencing of a heart attack.
Curious.
Personally, I think he's probably somewhere with facial reconstructive surgery in, southern Argentina or something like that.
Probably.
I don't know if any of you guys happen to share that conspiracy theory, but that is absolutely what I think.
I just immediately believe it as soon as you say it.
Yeah.
It's,
He was like on vacation too, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Don't you go on vacation when
in
you're
between in between conviction and sentencing?
Yes,
Don't you take a
always-
little trip? Yeah.
I'm always going on vacation, while I'm in the middle of presumably the end of my free life. Why not?
I guess you might as well, right? Like,
I just don't think at all that he died. I think, and given and I say that to say, like, stranger things have happened.
sure.
Right? He was he was vacationing in Colorado in his house in fucking Snowmass. Stranger things have happened. He had the resources and the money. He had the friendship of extremely high up people, most notably George H.W. Bush, who was the fucking president. He was the head of the CIA. He himself had an oil and gas company that was 100% like a CIA front. So yeah, it was just, I just don't believe for a second that he didn't get fucking, extricated and exiled on an island somewhere.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense because I just looked, and apparently since he died, his conviction was overturned, which meant the government couldn't seize his assets.
That was
Curious, very
2006.
curious.
Like, at a minimum, that means that his family got to keep all that, like, ill-gotten money,
Can I just read from this real quick?
Please.
2006 article from the New York Times. Judge throws out Kenneth Lay's conviction. It says a federal judge on Tuesday threw out the fraud and conspiracy conviction of Kenneth L. Lay, the former Enron executive who died of heart failure in July while on vacation in Colorado. Judge Simeon allegedly died.
Yeah.
Judge Simeon T. Lake III. What a fucking name.
Shut up.
Ruled that the conviction must be voided because Mr. Lay cannot pursue and appeal his guilty verdict. Fuck you.
Yeah.
Then what's the point of the justice? Then why do this? Okay, anyway. The decision, which has been expected, prevents the government from trying to seize more than $43.5 million from Mr. Lay's estate that prosecutors claim he stole from Enron before it collapsed in 2001. Mr. Lay, who was 64, who died about 6 weeks after he and another former executive, Jeffrey Skilling, were convicted of spearheading the fraud that led to Enron's collapse in December 2001. Oh, this is great. I'm just reading it here, too. It says, prosecutors had initially sought $140 million from Mr. Skilling and $43 million from Mr. Lay. But after Mr. Lay's death, the government moved to force Mr. Skilling to pay the entire 182 million, which is interesting.
Did they succeed at that?
So good question, because that's quite an old article. We should look at Jeffrey Skilling, who, by the way, is... Where am I? Oh, we're looking at here. Jeff Skilling was released from prison in 2019, February 2019. He spent 12 years in federal prison, which to me seems quite light when there's easily people that sell some weed and go in for life.
Yeah.
But that's just me. I'm just looking up Simeon T. Lake really quickly. I'm just curious.
Simeon
T. Lake III.
Apparently, Jeffrey Skilling was trying to get funding for a company in 2020.
I also
for an
heard
oil
this.
and gas trading platform.
Just start it up again. Why not?
He probably, he was, he's in prison or whatever for that long. I mean, think about going into prison at that time of year. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, God damn it. Shane, can you please read this?
It was just skirting through Wikipedia. And I guess it says the reason why he was in part released is 2010, an opinion by RBG herself. The Supreme Court unanimously nullified his conviction. It was honest services fraud conviction. I guess it was one of several. So that's good.
Christ,
that's cool.
A once in a generation justice. RBG. Yeah.
Oh, this is good too. His favorite book, and the it's mentioned here, it served as the foundation of his managerial philosophy, was Richard Dawkins' The Selfish Gene.
Yes. Yes.
I was hoping that was going to be like The Fountainhead or something, but that's also pretty good. Yeah.
The Selfish Gene is pretty good. Yeah. I have to be a shitty asshole cutthroat businessman because genetics make me this way. Yeah.
Sure.
That's fun.
It's
really fun.
I remember when I was, let's see, I guess I was like 18 or something. I don't know. I'd graduated high school, and I was house painting in the summer times. And I need a hat, just to protect myself from the sun or whatever. And I went on eBay and I got an Enron, like from their corporate swag, I got an Enron hat. And I wore that. I can't for the life of me fucking find it, but I know it's somewhere. It's got paint all over, but I love shit like that, especially like at that time. Like there was just a lot of things, and I was kind of rewatching some of the documentary today just to kind of just remind myself, and because I hate myself. But the like a lot of the things that are done then, like there was a skit that about the mark to market thing that they put out featuring Jeffrey Skilling, like as a I want to see if I can find it.
What, like Enron produced this?
Like Enron produced it to be like, hey, guess what? We're doing mark to market.
What?
It's so fucking bizarre.
I guess it's like hiding in plain sight, right? Let's do our criminal activity in a jokey skit or whatever.
Okay. Please include this. Shane, can I ask you to play this? Because my shit always goes fucking haywire. This literally was done by Enron, and they put this out. I'm hoping just internally for their company to see, but like this is just something that I can't imagine CEOs would do now. But to set this up, this is like a little skit that was done featuring Jeff Skilling, the fucking CEO or president at the time. I can't recall, about the hypothetical future value accounting, the mark to market shit.
Oh,
hey,
good
Rich,
morning.
how are you?
Finally,
Good to
great,
see you.
Jeff.
Yeah.
Good
Morning,
to
Rich.
see Todd. Sit down.
We've been working hard on this, and we've really pulled out all the stops. Look what we got. Origination. We did $20 million last year. We think we can do $120 million this year. Trading. We did $10 million last year. We think we can do 64 this year. This is the key.
You guys
We're
just
going to
taking
move
notes.
from mark-to-market accounting to something I call HFV. Hypothetical future value accounting.
Whoa.
If
What?
we do
Just
that,
make it
we
up?
can add
You
a
can just make it up?
gazillion dollars to the bottom line.
$1 zillion.
Oh, Jeff. All right, that sounds fantastic. Oh, Jeff, thank you. That's just superb performance. And you're going to go far, my boy. Probably president of the company one day.
You think so?
I think...
What the fuck is going on?
It's insane that they did this.
Oh my god.
And published it and put it out. The fact that we can see this, it's insane to me. They were like fucking laughing in our faces. They're just doing fraud and producing a fucking video of it. It's fucking insane. Like it's so radicalizing. Like it's so insane that they were just doing this and gloating in our fucking faces and like going it to the New York Stock Exchange and just ringing the bell in front of everyone, being like, "Hey, we're doing fraud, everybody," and and just manipulating the fucking market. And again, like they would do these kind of like pump and dump schemes where the executives would do shit like this and go out there. They were very much kind of acting. They were playing this part. They knew what they were doing. And kind of pumping up the stock price and then selling some of their shares. And they would just be personally enriching themselves every fucking quarter, basically. I mean, it was a complete fucking scam, a complete fraud. And, again, that's why I think it's like, one of the most American stories. I mean, just super, super fucking, it's a joke. It's a joke. It's just a big joke. And they became fabulously wealthy.
You know where Skilling was working before Enron?
Oh,
Yes.
where?
McKinsey.
Yes.
Of course.
Yes.
Of course.
Oh, that's fun. That's good stuff.
Yeah, that rocks. I feel really good about that.
I mean, as far as Fallout goes, for the record, one of the largest oil and gas producers, private company producers today in the United States is EOG Resources, which stands for Enron Oil and Gas.
Oh.
They kept the name. They kept the name.
Well, with a brand like that, you don't want to give that up.
I think at the time they were spun off in, they were spun off in 99. So like this was theoretically, not participating afterwards in the kind of same exact fraud that they were doing. But I mean, that's what it was born from. Yeah. And today they are just, they have a revenue of $11 billion with 3,000 employees. It's pretty awesome. You could just do this. You could just do the fraud. And as long as you spin it off, then, we can't. I honestly think like I need a lawyer. I don't mean, I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. But I'm just like, I honestly think that like, if you wanted to, you could just manufacture excitement over a company and just like get investors and take some. Oh no, Carrie, no.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt
No.
you. Yeah.
Okay, can you explain what liminal space I've been transported into by going to this website?
This is a link to Jeffrey Skilling's new company, which is called Veld Applied Analytics. I guess he was able to get the funding for it. It's a technology-based startup. It says, we believe that the energy industry will increasingly rely on asset securitization for financing. Asset securitization will require sophisticated analytical tools to establish and monitor valuation.
Can we pause?
Veld is building those tools.
Oh man, I got so fucking upset. I unplugged my fucking headphones. Hang on.
If you scroll down to the part on the site where it says stochastic evaluation,
that's what I'm looking at. Yeah.
It's got all these early 2000s graphics. It looks like fucking Nakoi Katsi. if you guys have ever seen that movie. This is pretty good stuff. There's just a tab here that says technology.
That's just like basic code in the screen, like the pictures.
It's
next
nothing.
To that.
It's nothing. It's like pictures. It's pictures of people in front of whiteboards looking at graphs.
No, but the stuff on the like under technology, that's a Grafana dashboard. That's like for monitoring uptime and memory used on computers.
Seriously,
like this is not anything.
Oh my god.
Oh, that's really funny. I really like it.
Basically, like. Just that fucking that thing broke my brain where it's like, sophisticated analytical tools to establish and monitor valuation. Mm-hmm. That is the thing that he was convicted in federal court for.
Right.
And did 12 years for it.
Right.
That's insane. Which maybe, I don't know, maybe he knows it better than anybody.
If you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, there's an email address that I'm definitely not in the process of sending Goatee to at the moment.
Let's see. contact@veld.io.
I fucking love it.
Let me see something. Veld.io Twitter.
Yes, Carrie. Yes.
No, it's not. It's not on there. It doesn't look like.
I mean, there is nothing. There is nothing here. Like, this site is so bare bones.
Nothing,
It's like, this is very clearly it's basically like fraudulent. You know what I mean? It's like pretending
To try to get like money.
Yeah, it's pretending it's already a company when it's very clearly not. It's just like a set of buzzwords assembled.
Yeah. Email them directly to ask about their business practices at contact@veld.io.
VELD.io in case anybody's
Veld.
Simple as
Veld.
that.
A really trustworthy name like Veld.
Isn't that a Dutch word?
I don't know.
That means it's Afrikaans. That means field. Interesting.
Curious.
Trusts the Afrikaners.
Mm.
Yeah. So anyway, for those that are interested in learning more about the Enron scandal, I can't fucking recommend enough you watching the Smartest Guys in the Room. It's a very, very informative documentary, and it's insane. Also, we didn't even talk about it, like the insane corporate culture that they had, where they would fire 15% of their workforce every year.
Oh my God.
But the underperforming workers or whatever. But again, like, no sane
Jesus Christ.
No sane company would like do that and like be successful. And that was one of the things that like clued some people off to be like, hey, maybe there's something funky going on here, because there's just no way that you can do that.
Right.
I went to go use a burner email address that I guess I used. Remember when we took that Scientology test on the show?
Yeah.
It's like they're still spamming this email account. Apparently.
No way.
Yeah. I'm getting all kinds of Scientology stuff in here.
Check this out.
This isn't his Twitter.
I don't know. It says, hello, Twitter. I am back in Houston. #energy. And he hasn't posted again. I think the fact that he hasn't posted again is like,
Why does he follow another thing called
Skilling?
@Skilling. Is this his brother or something?
I don't know.
Hang on, let's do a little.
We're going to have to do a deep dive on
the Skillings.
Yeah, that is his brother, Tom Skilling. He's a weatherman.
Shit.
That
He's a
is,
weatherman in Chicago.
Yeah.
And then how many people are following? 23 people follow him. Wow.
And now it's 24, baby.
Yeah. Jeff, if you're listening, if you got some capital, I got an incredible opportunity to, does he reply? All right. We're just now just on air tweeting at Jeff Skilling.
This is our time. This is
our time.
Yeah. All right.
We're
wrap it up.
This. Let's wrap it up. Folks, happy anniversary to the Enron collapse and their convictions. Ken Lay, if you're out there, have me over. Let's have a cocktail. I've got some great ideas for you. All right, folks. Till next time.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Stay cool.
Stay cool.
Bye.
Bye.
Ship is sinking. The ship is sinking. The ship is sinking. There's a leak in the boiler room. The poor, the lame, the blind. Who were the ones that we kept in charge? Killers, thieves, and warriors. God's away on business. God's away on business. Digging up the tank with the shovel and the pick. It's a job. Bloody mood rising with the blade.